This woman named Charlotte used to be a friend of Baltasar Maria Ngonga's wife. She says that Baltasar's wife asked her to sleep with her husband so that, at least, her husband would stop chasing after other women. However, it ended up in a different way. Listen to how it went.
In 2022, I, Charlotte, found myself in a quiet rhythm of life as a single mother. Raising my son in Equatorial Guinea wasn't easy, but I managed. I worked hard to provide for us both, and while life was tough, I had learned to appreciate the small moments of peace. But nothing in my life could prepare me for the unexpected encounter with Maria Ngonga. Maria was the wife of Baltasar Ngonga, the head of the National Financial Investigation Agency. He was a powerful figure in the country, admired and feared in equal measure. Maria, on the other hand, was a gracious woman, always composed and seemingly perfect. Yet, when I met her that day, something in her eyes betrayed a deep sadness. We ran into each other at a market one afternoon. I was browsing the produce section, and she was just a few steps away, her eyes darting nervously as if searching for someone. It wasn't like her to look so unsettled. As we exchanged pleasantries, I could tell something was off. She asked if we could talk privately, and I followed her to a quieter corner of the market. "Charlotte," she began, her voice shaky. "I need your help. It's about Baltasar. I believe he's been seeing other women. I don't know what to do." I was taken aback. Baltasar Ngonga, the powerful man everyone respected and feared cheating. It didn't seem possible. Maria, however, spoke with a quiet urgency that made me believe her. "I've heard rumors. I've seen the signs," she continued. "But he won't admit it. I can't confront him directly, he's too proud, too stubborn. But you could do something. I need you to date him. Keep him close, Charlotte. Maybe if he sees that you care for him, he'll stop with the others." I stared at her, trying to make sense of what she was asking. Here was a woman who had everything, the luxury, the status, and yet she was begging me, a simple woman with a son, to get close to her husband. It felt wrong, almost like I was betraying her by even considering it. "I don't know, Maria," I said slowly. "Are you sure this is what you want?" She nodded. "I don't want to lose him, Charlotte. I just want him to understand what he's risking. If you can make him stay with you, maybe he'll see how much he has to lose." I hesitated. But as I looked at her, I saw the vulnerability behind her perfect facade. She was desperate, and I couldn't turn my back on her. I agreed to help, but I promised myself that I wouldn't fall for Baltasar. I couldn't. This wasn't about love, it was about protecting Maria's marriage, about keeping a powerful man from falling deeper into temptation. The arrangement was strange. I began spending time with Baltasar, though I never truly enjoyed it. Our meetings were awkward at first, with him often distant, almost uninterested. But over time, I noticed something shifting. When he spoke of his work, the pressure weighed heavily on him. There were moments when he would open up, confessing how lonely he felt at the top, how he craved companionship but found it hard to trust anyone. "I don't know how to make it stop, Charlotte," he confessed one evening, his voice heavy. "The rumors, the women. It's like I can't escape it. But Maria, she deserves better than this. She doesn't deserve to feel like this." I saw the turmoil in his eyes. It wasn't that he didn't care for Maria, it was that he was lost in a world of power and loneliness, where the lines between right and wrong blurred. At that moment, I realized that my role wasn't just to keep him away from other women. I was there to help him confront his own demons, to make him understand the cost of his actions. I wasn't just a distraction or a stand-in for Maria, I was a mirror, forcing him to look at the man he had become. Weeks passed, and the rumors surrounding Baltasar slowly began to quiet down. He seemed more present in his relationship with Maria, less distracted by his power and the temptation of other women. The tension between them eased, and I could tell that Maria had noticed the change, though she never knew the full extent of what had transpired. Balthasar never asked me for anything beyond what I had given him: companionship, understanding, and a chance to reflect on his life. And eventually, he seemed to make the decision on his own to turn things around. The change wasn't immediate, but it was enough for Maria to see that her husband was no longer the man he had been. As for me, I walked away from the situation with my own peace of mind, knowing I had helped. I didn't need recognition or thanks. The truth was, how I had helped Maria and Balthasar remained my secret. But I knew that, in the end, I had done the right thing. Sometimes, life forces us into roles we never expect to play, but it also shows us the power of compassion and the importance of standing by those who need it most. Months had passed since I helped Maria and Balthasar. Life had returned to its familiar rhythm, though something within me had subtly shifted. I found myself reflecting more often on the fragile nature of relationships, and how easily they could crumble under the weight of secrets and power. Despite the small victory of restoring some semblance of peace in their marriage, I couldn't escape the quiet unease that lingered in me. One afternoon, as I was walking home from work, I received a call from Maria. I hadn't spoken to her much since Balthasar's transformation, but I had hoped that they were truly moving forward, that things were improving. "Charlotte," she said, her voice trembling. "I need to talk to you. Can you come over?" The urgency in her voice sent a jolt through me. I didn't hesitate to agree, though my heart raced. I made my way to their house, unsure of what I was walking into. When I arrived, Maria greeted me at the door, her face pale and drawn. She led me inside, where Balthasar was sitting in the living room, his back turned, staring out the window as if lost in thought. The tension in the air was palpable, and I immediately sensed that something had changed. "I don't know what's happening, Charlotte," Maria said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Balthasar has been different again. More distant than ever. It's like he's slipping back into his old ways." I glanced at Balthasar, who didn't even acknowledge my presence. His face was tight with something I couldn't place, but it wasn't the guilt I had seen before. It was something darker, more unsettling. "Balthasar," I said softly, trying to draw him out. "What's going on?" He turned slowly, his eyes meeting mine. The coldness in them sent a shiver down my spine. "I don't know what you expect from me, Charlotte," he replied, his voice low and flat. "You've played your part. You've made Maria happy for a while. But I can't pretend anymore. I'm not the man you think I am. I never was." I felt a pang of disappointment. I had hoped that he had changed for good, but now, the cracks in his facade were starting to widen. Maria, standing behind me, looked on the verge of tears. "I don't understand," she whispered. "You told me you were trying. You said you would change." Balthasar let out a harsh laugh, the sound filled with bitterness. "I tried, Maria. But you can't change who you are. I'm not the man who can settle down, not the man who can stay faithful. And I'll never be that person. I tried to be, but it's not who I am." He stood up, his tall figure looming over us. "I'm tired of pretending. I've spent my life building this empire, and I'm not about to let anyone or anything get in the way of it, not even you." The air thickened with the weight of his words. I looked at Maria, whose eyes were wide with shock, but I could see the quiet resignation starting to settle in her. I turned to Balthasar, my voice steady despite the storm in my chest. "You're right about one thing: no one can change who they are. But you can decide what kind of man you want to be. It doesn't have to be this way." Balthasar looked at me, something flickering in his eyes, but the hardness returned almost immediately. He said nothing, just turned and walked out of the room, leaving a trail of silence in his wake. I turned to Maria, who had collapsed onto the couch, her face buried in her hands. I thought, I thought he could be different, she murmured. I sat down beside her, offering the only comfort I could. People can only change if they want to. You can't force it, Maria. You've done all you can. Now it's up to him to decide. She nodded slowly, her shoulders shaking. I don't know if I can do this anymore, Charlotte. I feel like I've lost him. I don't even know who he is anymore. I sighed, my heart aching for her. I had seen Maria at her best, confident and composed, but now she seemed broken, shattered by the very man who had once been her world. I can't tell you what to do, Maria, I said gently. But you have to ask yourself if this is the kind of life you want. If the man you're holding onto is the man you deserve. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of our breathing in the heavy silence. Maria wiped her tears away, sitting up straighter, though I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. I don't know what comes next, she whispered. But I can't keep pretending. I nodded. You don't have to. But no matter what you decide, you deserve peace, Maria. You deserve happiness. I remember. In the beginning of 2023 when I saw him again, Balthasar. The cold January air seemed to freeze everything around me, but when I opened the door to find him standing there, I felt my pulse quicken. His presence was like an electric shock, bringing everything I had tried to bury in the back of my mind back to the surface. Charlotte, he said softly, his voice as low and familiar as it had been all those months ago. He stood just outside my doorway, his expression unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, a plea, maybe. It was impossible to tell. I stood frozen for a moment, torn between shock and something deeper, something I couldn't explain. I had thought I was over it, over him. But the way he looked at me, vulnerable yet commanding, stirred something within me that I hadn't expected. What are you doing here, Balthasar? I asked, though part of me already knew. I need to talk, he said, his words hanging in the air like a confession he hadn't yet dared to make. I know I don't have the right to ask, but I can't do this anymore. I need to see you. I need to explain myself. I couldn't bring myself to invite him in at first, not with all the history between us. Maria had trusted me, and she had been through so much. What was I doing, even thinking of letting him back into my life, back into this delicate space I'd tried to protect? Yet, despite myself, I found myself stepping aside to let him in. His presence in my home was like a wave crashing against the shore, unwelcome yet impossible to ignore. As we sat down in the living room, the silence between us grew heavy. He seemed to struggle for words, his usual confidence stripped away. I've been thinking a lot, Charlotte, he began, his gaze not meeting mine. About everything. About Maria. About us. I exhaled slowly, heart pounding. Balthasar, what are you really here for? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. We both know this isn't just about Maria. You and I both know what happened between us, and what it meant. He finally met my gaze, and I saw a flicker of that familiar intensity, the same look he had worn back when we first crossed paths. It wasn't just some fling, Charlotte, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I've never been able to shake the feeling that there's something between us, something I can't walk away from. Even after all this time, even after everything that happened. My heart thudded in my chest. I had tried so hard to move on, to convince myself that Maria deserved better, that I had done the right thing by walking away from him. But now, here he was, laying it all bare in front of me. I could feel the pull, the tension, that connection we had shared before everything fell apart. We can't go back to that, I said, though my voice trembled. Maria. She's my best friend. I can't betray her like this. Not after everything she's been through. You've already had her enough, Balthasar. I won't be a part of that. There were other nights. Other secret meetings in dark corners, private spots where we could forget about the world and just be. In hotel rooms, in empty apartments, even in his car parked far from any eyes that might catch us. Each time, the passion seemed to grow, and with it, the stakes. It wasn't just physical anymore, it was emotional, too. I had convinced myself that I could compartmentalize everything, that I could keep this part of my life hidden, safe from the reality of what it would do to Maria if she ever found out. But deep inside, I knew I was playing a dangerous game. The lines were blurring, and with every stolen moment, I was becoming more and more entangled in a situation that could never have a happy ending. Balthasar's desire for secrecy began to fade as he grew more and more captivated by the idea of documenting what we shared, almost as if he wanted to capture it, preserve it in some twisted form of nostalgia. At first, it started small. He'd pull out his phone during a quiet moment, a sly grin on his face, suggesting we make a video, just a simple one, something playful. I was hesitant at first, feeling the weight of what I was already risking, but something about the intimacy of the idea, the vulnerability in his request, made me give in. The first video was innocent enough. He filmed us laughing together in bed, the warmth between us palpable, the atmosphere light. It was a way to capture something beautiful, I told myself, a memory, the fleeting moment before it all slipped away. But soon, the videos became more than just innocent snapshots of our time together. They grew darker, more intimate, and slowly, dangerously, they blurred the lines between affection and obsession. One night, after a long day of stolen moments, Balthasar looked at me, his gaze intense, almost too intense. "Why don't we make something real this time?" he whispered, a challenge in his voice. His phone appeared before I could even respond, and before I knew it, he was recording as our bodies entwined, the sounds of our breaths mingling with the rhythm of our movements. My mind screamed for me to stop, to tell him to put the camera down, but I didn't. I couldn't. I was too far gone, too lost in the heat of the moment, to think about the consequences. The videos became a routine. At first, it felt like an escape, a way to forget the weight of my guilt. But soon, I was addicted to the rush, addicted to the forbidden nature of what we were doing, to the secret we were building together. Each time the camera rolled, it was as if the world faded away, and all that mattered was Balthasar, his touch, the connection we shared in those stolen moments. But the truth was, I was walking a razor's edge. I had convinced myself that I could handle it, that I could keep this part of my life separate from my relationship with Maria. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. The line between the two worlds was becoming impossible to maintain, and I was starting to crumble under the pressure. One evening, Maria stopped by unexpectedly. I hadn't expected her to visit so soon, and panic surged through me. The door opened, and there she stood, her eyes searching the room as if something wasn't right. My heart pounded in my chest as I realized what had happened. The videos weren't just stored on Balthasar's phone anymore. They had somehow found their way to my laptop, where I had foolishly left them open. Maria's gaze flicked to the screen, and in an instant, the room was frozen. She didn't need to say anything, the horror was written all over her face. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she saw everything: the videos, the intimate moments we had shared, the betrayal that had played out behind her back. "Charlotte," Maria's voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through me like a blade. She stepped closer, her face pale, tears threatening to spill from her eyes. You did this to me. To us." I wanted to speak, to explain, but the words wouldn't come. The regret hit me like a wave, overwhelming, suffocating. I had been so caught up in the thrill, in the excitement of something forbidden, that I had forgotten the person who would be hurt the most, the one I claimed to love. Maria's eyes burned with pain and anger as she stood there, staring at the screen. You let him film you? Her voice trembled with disbelief. You let him record this? Us. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, but I couldn't bring myself to apologize. It felt too late, too hollow. I'm sorry, I said, the words empty, meaningless. I never meant for it to go this far. But the truth was, I had let it spiral. I had let it go on longer than I should have. I had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed, and now there was no way to fix it. Maria shook her head, her face twisted in pain. I don't know who you are anymore, Charlotte. Her voice cracked. I thought you were the person I could trust. And in that moment, everything came crashing down. The weight of my actions, the lies I had told, the love I had betrayed, it was all too much to bear. As Maria walked out the door, leaving me in the ruins of what was once our life, the regret hit me harder than anything else. I had chosen passion over loyalty, desire over trust. And in doing so, I had destroyed everything that mattered. Balthasar's presence, once a source of excitement and pleasure, now felt like a chain around my neck. His thrill, his promises of change, meant nothing. All I had left was the stark, crushing reality of what I had lost: Maria, the one person who had truly cared for me, and the life I had thrown away for something fleeting. In the end, the videos were nothing but evidence of my own downfall, a cruel reminder of the choices I had made, and the pain I had caused in the name of something that wasn't real. I had let myself be consumed by the fire, and now there was nothing left but the ashes.